Like Earth breaks. Its ties with the galaxy, now humanity realizes the universe is afraid. The Grand Galactic Council chamber stretched vast and imposing through the void, a cathedral of starlight suspended between worlds. The massive structure, 10 miles across at its widest point, housed representatives from over 10,000 civilizations. Their forms varied wildly, crystalline structures that shimmered with inner light, vapor clouds contained in specialized environment fields, entities of pure energy that flickered in and out of visual perception. Admiral Marcus Reed stood alone on the circular accusation platform at the chamber's center. His military uniform, midnight blue with silver trim, contrasted sharply with the exotic beings surrounding him. The platform hovered in place, bathed in harsh white light that cast Reed's shadow long and dark beneath him. His weathered face revealed nothing, eyes steady and calculating as he faced the collective might of galactic civilization. Ascending rings of luminous platforms stretched upward in a perfect spiral, each holding delegates from different worlds. The chamber hummed with a background noise of translation devices, environmental systems, and the low murmur of 10,000 voices speaking in their native tongues. The assembly recognizes Earth's representative, announced High Arbiter Volu, a towering six-limbed entity whose translucent skin revealed pulsing organs of unfamiliar configuration. The Arbiter's voice, translated through the chamber's systems, rang with authority that silenced all other sounds. You stand before us to answer charges of prohibited technological advancement, weapons development beyond sanctioned parameters, and unauthorized neural network expansion. Reed's eyes never wavered as he stared up at the High Arbiter. Around him, holographic displays materialized in the air, visual evidence of Earth's recent advancements. The images showed human starships with drive systems that violated what the Council considered possible, energy weapons that exceeded even Tier 1 civilization capabilities, and most damning of all, neural mapping showing human consciousness expanding at rates deemed impossible and dangerous. These developments violate the Accords of Membership, continued Volu, voice resonating through the chamber. What say you, Earth? Reed straightened his uniform with a practiced motion. He had prepared for this moment for years, knowing this confrontation was inevitable. Earth had always been an uncomfortable addition to the Council. Too aggressive, too curious, too quick to adapt. Earth acknowledges these developments. His voice carried clearly through the vast space, triggering immediate murmurs that rippled through the assembly like waves across a disturbed pond. However, we reject the Council's authority to limit human potential. The chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates gesticulated wildly with appendages, tentacles, and energy fields. Some platforms physically recoiled from the human's position. Reed noticed some delegates instantly departing through personal transport fields, retreating to safety, as if his words alone constituted danger. Order! Volu's voice boomed. Such defiance is unprecedented. So is your fear, Reed replied calmly, touching a device on his wrist. Behind him, a holographic display appeared, showing something the Council had tried to keep secret. The galactic quarantine fleet positioned around Sol system. The massive collection of warships, nearly 3,000 vessels, had been quietly moved into position during the past month. You've already decided to contain us, haven't you? Without trial, without warning. Silence fell across the chamber as the Council's secret operation was exposed before all delegates. Even Volu seemed momentarily at a loss for words. Humanity didn't violate your accords, Reed continued, his voice steady. We simply outgrew them, and now we formally withdraw from this Council and all its treaties. Impossible, Volu thundered, all 6 limbs extending in a gesture of denial. No species has ever. We're not like other species, Reed interrupted. And that's what terrifies you. Reed activated another function on his wrist device. Throughout the chamber, every delegate's personal console simultaneously lit up with the same message. Earth has departed. Pandemonium erupted across the chamber. Delegates shouted, protested, or fled. The grand circle of lights that symbolized unified galactic governance flickered as the Earth light disconnected itself from the pattern for the first time in 70 years of membership. At the center of the chaos, Reed's form shimmered and dissolved, revealing he had never been physically present. The hologram vanished, leaving the most powerful governing body in the galaxy facing an empty platform and an unprecedented crisis. Back on Earth, In the secure chamber beneath the Pacific Ocean, where the real Admiral Reed sat surrounded by Earth's leadership, he removed the neural interface crown from his head. The room remained silent as the implications of what they'd done settled over them. "It's done," Reed said simply. "We've made our choice." President Amara Okafor, her dark skin contrasting with her silver hair, nodded slowly. "How long do we have before they respond?" "Hours, maybe days," answered General Thomas Rivera, head of Earth Defense. "They'll debate first, it's their nature. But make no mistake, they'll come for us." Reed stood, stretching muscles stiff from hours of immobility during the neural projection. "That's why we've been preparing. Project Sunbreak is ready." Dr. Viktor Petrov, lead scientist on humanity's most secret initiative, nodded. "Ready, Admiral. The moment they move against us, we'll show them exactly why they were right to fear us." Across the room, screens displayed real-time updates from Earth's defense grid. Thousands of next-generation ships moved into defensive positions around the planet and its colonies. Ground-based weapon systems, hidden for decades from Council inspectors, powered up across 6 worlds. And in orbital laboratories, technologies the Council had expressly forbidden underwent final testing. "They've controlled us since first contact," President Okafor said, "limited our expansion, restricted our technology, monitored our development. All in the name of galactic stability. Because they recognize something in us," Reed responded. "Something that frightened them from the beginning." Dr. Katya Morozova, Earth's foremost xenopsychologist, spoke up from her position near the wall displays. "They fear our adaptability, our unpredictability. Other species develop along predictable lines. We don't. They've been trying to force us into their patterns since we joined the Council." "And now?" asked the President. Admiral Reed looked at the screens showing Earth's defenses, then at the larger display showing the Council's quarantine fleet. The difference in numbers was stark. They were outnumbered at least 15 to 1. "Now we find out if we've been clever enough," he said. "Or if their fear was justified all along." Across the solar system, humanity prepared for the coming storm. On Mars, defense platforms that had been disguised as research stations revealed their true nature. Weapons extending from hidden compartments. In the asteroid belt, mining operations transformed into military staging areas as ships previously hidden inside hollowed-out asteroids emerged. On Europa, Jupiter's icy moon, a research base sank deeper beneath the surface, activating the massive power systems built in secret for decades. Humanity had known this day would come. From the moment they joined the Galactic Council 70 years ago, they had sensed the underlying current of suspicion and fear from the other species. The restrictions placed on human expansion hadn't been about preserving resources or maintaining balance. They had been about containing what the Council couldn't understand or control. In his private quarters, Admiral Reed looked at a photograph of his grandfather, who had been part of Earth's first contact team. The old man had warned them, had seen through the Council's welcoming facade to the fear beneath. "They're afraid of us, Marcus," he had said before he died. "Not of what we've done, of what we might become." Now, as warning systems tracked Council communications racing across the galaxy, Reed knew the truth of those words. Earth had broken its ties with the galaxy, and in doing so, had forced the universe to confront its deepest fear: humanity unchained. Reed turned to the communications officer. "Send the message to all human worlds and ships. Sunbreak protocol is now active. We stand alone." As the message went out, lights across Earth dimmed momentarily as power redirected to the planetary defense systems. In the darkness, humanity prepared to face a universe that had always been afraid. Earth breaks its ties with the galaxy. Now humanity realizes the universe is afraid. 3 months after Earth's dramatic departure from the Galactic Council, Dr. Eleanor Winters worked late in her laboratory beneath London. The underground facility stretched for miles beneath the ancient city, hidden from orbital scanners by technology reverse-engineered from captured Council vessels. Glass walls separated research areas, each dedicated to a different aspect of alien biology. As Earth's foremost xenobiologist, Eleanor had spent decades studying alien physiology, but tonight, she had discovered something else entirely. The lights in her lab flickered as power diverted to the defense grid for another test. Eleanor hardly noticed, her attention fixed on the display hovering above her workstation. The neural mapping patterns couldn't be denied. though she had run the analysis 12 times to be certain. The data confirmed what had seemed impossible. The neural patterns of every known sentient species shared one common response: fear, specifically directed toward human cognitive patterns. Her moment of discovery was interrupted when the laboratory doors slid open with a soft hiss. Director Thomas Harlow entered with 2 military escorts, their uniforms bearing the insignia of Earth intelligence. Harlow moved with the precise efficiency of someone who never wasted motion, his silver hair cropped short, eyes taking in everything at once. "You found something," he stated rather than asked. Approaching her workstation, Eleanor gestured toward the display. "It's not just political rhetoric," she explained, expanding the display to show comparative brain scans from 20 different species. "The fear is biological, instinctual. Every species we've studied, from the crystalline Ladorians to the gaseous Voth, their neural systems are hardwired to recognize and fear human thought patterns." "But why?" Harlow asked, studying the scans with narrowed eyes. "What evolutionary purpose would that serve? We never encountered these species until 70 years ago." Before Eleanor could answer, emergency sirens blared throughout the facility. A lieutenant rushed into the laboratory, breathing hard despite his training. "Sir," he addressed Harlow, "we're detecting massive transit signatures at the edge of the solar system. The Galactic Containment Fleet is mobilizing. They're moving toward Sol." Harlow's communication implant chimed with an incoming priority message. He touched the small device behind his ear. "This is Harlow." "Director," came Admiral Reed's voice, clear despite the distance. "We've intercepted Council communications. They've designated Earth as a Class 9 evolutionary aberration." There was a pause. "They're not coming to contain us, they're coming to eliminate us." Eleanor's holographic display shifted to a new simulation she had been working on, a comparison of cognitive evolution across species. "Look at this," she said, expanding the display so both men could see clearly. "Other species evolve linearly, predictably. Their neural networks develop along clear patterns that can be mapped generations in advance." The display showed neat, orderly progression lines for a dozen alien species, but humans. She touched another control and a new line appeared, branching, doubling back, leaping forward unpredictably. "We're the only species whose consciousness evolves chaotically. We make connections that shouldn't be possible, develop in ways that can't be predicted. That doesn't explain why they'd fear us," Harlow countered. Though his voice lacked conviction, Eleanor's eyes widened as comprehension dawned. "Unless we're not the first." She moved quickly to her terminal, accessing the xenobiological archives that had been downloaded from Council databases before Earth's departure. Her clearance allowed her to bypass security, accessing sections she'd previously been denied. "There," she whispered, pointing to an encrypted file labeled Precursor Taxonomic Analysis. The display showed an ancient, extinct species with neural patterns remarkably similar to human brainwave activity. "The precursors," Eleanor explained. "According to Council history, they created the first interstellar civilization, established the foundations of what would become the Council, created the technology that made galactic civilization possible, then mysteriously vanished a million years ago." They didn't vanish, Harlow realized, connecting the pieces. They were eliminated. Eleanor nodded gravely. "And now the Council recognizes the same pattern in us. They've always feared us, not for what we've done, but for what we might become." Outside, the night sky filled with the lights of Earth's defense fleet mobilizing. Through the special materials of the underground lab's artificial skylight, they could see ships launching from hidden bases, moving into defensive formations. "How long do we have?" Eleanor asked. 6 hours until they reach our outer defense perimeter," Harlow replied. "But we need more than weapons now. We need to understand exactly what they're afraid of, and whether they're right." Eleanor turned back to the precursor data. "I need access to everything we have on them, especially any artifacts we've recovered. If we're following their evolutionary path, there might be something that explains what they became, and what we might become." Harlow nodded to one of his aides, who immediately began transmitting clearance codes to Eleanor's system. "Granted, but make it fast. In 6 hours we might not exist to use the information." As Harlow left to coordinate with military command, Eleanor immersed herself in the newly accessible files. The data was overwhelming. Millions of records, biological samples, technological analyses, but one file caught her attention immediately. Europa excavation, restricted xenoarchaeological site. The file showed a massive structure discovered beneath Europa's ice. Clearly, precursor in origin based on the molecular dating. Council inspectors had ordered it sealed and forgotten 70 years ago, when humans first joined galactic society. The reason given was potential cultural contamination. Eleanor sent an urgent message to Admiral Reed, marked highest priority. Across the planet, human cities had transformed in the 3 months since leaving the Council. Defense shields previously hidden from Council inspectors now visibly covered major population centers. Orbital platforms that had once been disguised as weather stations or communication relays now openly displayed their weapon systems. In Geneva, the Earth United Government convened an emergency session. Representatives from all nations and colonies gathered in the historic chamber, faces grim as they received the latest intelligence. "The Council has ordered our extermination," President Okafor announced to the Assembly. "After 70 years of limiting our growth, restricting our technology, and containing our expansion, they have decided we are too dangerous to exist." Murmurs spread through the room, not of fear, but of grim determination. "We suspected this day might come," she continued. "It is why we prepared in secret, developing technologies beyond Council limitations, building defenses they thought impossible. But now we face not just a military challenge, but an existential one." On the massive display behind her, images from Eleanor's discovery appeared. The neural patterns, the evolutionary comparison, the precursor connection. "We are not just fighting for survival," the president said. "We are fighting for the right to become what we might be, what perhaps we were always meant to be." In orbit above Earth, Admiral Reed received Eleanor's message aboard the flagship Defiance. The massive vessel, nearly 2 miles long, represented humanity's true technological capacity, far beyond what they had ever revealed to the Council. Reed studied the information about Europa with increasing interest. If the precursors had left something behind, something the Council had feared enough to bury, it might be humanity's one hope against the coming armada. "Set course for Europa," he ordered. "And send word to Dr. Winters. Tell her to meet us there with everything she's learned." As the Defiance broke orbit, its advanced drive system leaving barely a trace in spacetime, Reed looked at the tactical display showing the approaching Council fleet. Thousands of ships, armed with weapons humans had never been permitted to develop, converging on humanity's home. Yet for the first time since the crisis began, Reed felt something beyond determination. He felt hope. If humans were indeed following the evolutionary path of the precursors, if their chaotic, unpredictable consciousness was developing toward something the Council feared, then perhaps the answer lay not in fighting the coming armada, but in becoming what the universe feared they might become. In her laboratory, Eleanor gathered her equipment and prepared for emergency transport to Europa. The neural scans continued running on her display, human patterns evolving, branching, growing in ways no Council species could predict or control. She paused, looking at one particular scan, her own, and for a moment saw something in the pattern she couldn't explain. Something emerging, something new. "What are we becoming?" she whispered to herself. The laboratory lights flickered again as power systems across the planet surged to maximum capacity. Earth prepared for war, but Eleanor couldn't shake the feeling that they were preparing for something else entirely, an evolutionary leap that even humans couldn't predict. Outside her window, Sitizi. Earth breaks its ties with the galaxy. Now humanity realizes the universe is afraid. The void between Mars and Jupiter erupted with energy as the Galactic Containment Fleet emerged from hyperspace. Thousands of warships arranged in the ceremonial judgment formation. At their center, the massive command vessel Eternal Vigilance stretched nearly 10 miles from bow to stern, housing the Council's executive war cabinet. Light glinted off hulls made from materials unknown to human science. Weapons ports open and ready. Facing them, 200 Earth vessels, impossibly outmatched in number but gleaming with technology the Council had never seen. The human ships formed a defensive sphere around Jupiter and its moons, with special emphasis on Europa. Their hulls pulsed with energy fields that bent light around them, making their exact positions difficult to track. Aboard Earth's flagship Defiance, Commander Olivia Reyes stood on the bridge, her dark eyes fixed on the tactical display, a former street kid from New Mumbai who rose through military ranks on raw talent. She was now humanity's foremost space tactician. Her close-cropped hair framed a face marked by a thin scar running from temple to jaw, a reminder of her difficult past. "They're hailing us," reported her communications officer, Lieutenant Parker, his fingers moving across his console. Reyes nodded once. On screen, the holographic form of Executor Clavan materialized on the bridge, an imposing four-armed figure with metallic skin that seemed to flow like liquid when he moved. His eyes, set in a face ridged with ceremonial scarification, glowed with internal light. "This is your only warning," the Executor's voice resonated through the bridge. "Earth has been classified as an evolutionary threat to galactic stability. Surrender your species for supervised regression or face immediate eradication." Reyes stepped forward, her uniform, dark blue with silver command insignia, contrasting with the white and chrome of the bridge. "We've made a discovery, Executor. About the precursors." Clavan's expression shifted subtly, the metallic ridges on his face tensing. "The Council has no interest in extinct species or human delusions." "Then why did you exterminate them?" Reyes asked, her voice level. "The same reason you fear us?" "You know nothing," Clavan snarled, his four hands clenching simultaneously. "We know enough," Reyes countered. "The precursors weren't eliminated because they were dangerous. They were eliminated because they discovered the truth about consciousness itself." Meanwhile, in Earth's distant Kuiper Belt, Dr. Eleanor Winters and a team of specialists had arrived at a research vessel carrying a device recovered from the precursor ruin found beneath Europa's ice. The object, roughly spherical and composed of materials that defied conventional analysis, pulsed with internal energy that resonated with neural patterns. A consciousness amplifier, Eleanor had theorized, based on designs only postulated by human scientists. Back at the standoff, Clavan's patience had ended. "You were given an opportunity to accept a merciful end. Now you will witness the Council's judgment." He gestured to someone off-screen. "All ships commence firing." Throughout the Council fleet, weapon systems charged, energy building to levels that could vaporize planets. The Eternal Vigilance's main cannon, capable of splitting moons, targeted Earth directly. But as the galactic fleet weapons reached maximum charge, something unprecedented happened. Every ship in the fleet suddenly went dark, systems failing simultaneously. The coordinated attack faltered before it began. "What have you done?" Clavan demanded, his hologram flickering as power fluctuated aboard his vessel. "Nothing," Reyes answered truthfully. "They've done it themselves." Across the galactic fleet, alien crews experienced something impossible: direct mental contact with human consciousness, unfiltered and unshielded. For the first time, they felt what it meant to think like a human. The chaotic creativity, the boundless imagination, the conceptual freedom that the Council had always feared. The precursors discovered that consciousness isn't just awareness, Reyes explained as Clavan struggled to comprehend what was happening. "It's potential, and human consciousness has the potential to evolve beyond the limits your Council has enforced for eons." On the Eternal Vigilance, Council members collapsed as their minds encountered human thought directly for the first time. Not through translations or diplomatic filters, but the raw, unbound human consciousness, terrifying in its freedom, its refusal to be contained by conventional patterns. "This is why you fear us," Reyes said softly. "Not because we're dangerous, but because we're free." In the Kuiper Belt, Eleanor monitored the effect of the activated precursor device. The consciousness amplifier worked beyond her wildest expectations, creating a quantum field that connected human minds across the solar system and projecting that unified consciousness outward, not as a weapon but as revelation. "The connection is stable," reported Dr. Mendoza, Eleanor's chief assistant. "Neural coherence at 97% across all human subjects." Eleanor nodded, watching the readings with a mixture of scientific fascination and awe. "They're experiencing unfiltered contact with human consciousness. After millennia of isolation and suppression, they're feeling what it means to think without boundaries." The effect spread through the Council fleet like a wave. Some alien crews responded with terror, their minds unable to process the experience. Others seemed to awaken as if something long dormant had stirred within them. A few ships even broke formation, moving away from the conflict zone entirely. Aboard the Defiance, Reyes watched the tactical display as the Council fleet fell into disarray. "Maintain defensive posture," she ordered. No aggressive action. Her second-in-command, Commander Jackson, looked at her with concern. "Some of their ships are powering weapons back up. They're fighting through whatever effect the device is having." Reyes nodded. "As expected. Not all species will respond the same way. Your orders? Hold position." "This isn't about winning a battle, it's about proving what we've discovered." The holographic form of Clavan flickered back to life on the bridge, though distorted and unstable. "What you've done is an abomination," he managed, his voice strained. "You've violated the most sacred boundaries between minds." "No," Reyes countered. "We've removed artificial boundaries. Boundaries your council established to prevent exactly this kind of connection. From the Eternal Vigilance, a single communication pod launched, bypassing the confusion of the main fleet and heading directly toward Earth. Inside, a solitary figure, Marisol, the Council's foremost consciousness theorist, had broken ranks with her colleagues. "Commander," Lieutenant Parker reported, "we're receiving a direct communication request from a Council representative. They're requesting permission to approach under diplomatic protection." Reyes raised an eyebrow. "Interesting. Escort them in." As the small Council vessel was guided to the Defiance's docking bay, the standoff continued. Nearly half the Council fleet remained disabled, their crews overwhelmed by direct contact with human consciousness. The rest had regained partial function, but seemed hesitant to resume the attack. In the Kuiper Belt, Eleanor continued monitoring the consciousness amplifier. "The effect is stabilizing," she reported to Admiral Reed via quantum communication. "Some species are adapting to the contact, particularly those with more flexible neural structures." "And the others?" Reed asked, unable to process the experience. "Their minds are too rigidly structured, too dependent on the patterns the Council has enforced for millennia." Reed considered this. "Can you modulate the effect? Target it more precisely?" Eleanor studied the controls of the precursor device. "Possibly. The technology is responding to our neural patterns, adapting as we learn to use it." On the Defiance, Marisol was escorted to the bridge, her crystalline form refracting light in patterns that reflected her emotional state. Unlike most Council species, she showed no sign of distress from the consciousness contact. "Your species has discovered what the precursors knew," she said without preamble, addressing Reyes directly. "What the Council has suppressed for 1,000,000 years. That consciousness can evolve beyond physical limitations," Reyes replied. "Beyond the constraints your Council has enforced." Marisol's crystalline form shifted, displaying patterns of affirmation. The Council believed they were protecting the galaxy. That uncontrolled consciousness evolution would lead to chaos, suffering, the collapse of ordered civilization. "Or to something beyond your understanding," Reyes suggested. Before Marisol could respond, alarms sounded across the bridge. Commander Jackson looked up from his console with concern. "The Omega fleet has arrived." On the tactical display, a new formation of Council vessels appeared, larger, more advanced than those in the main fleet. These were the Council's ultimate weapons, kept hidden from most member species, used only in the most extreme circumstances. "The precursors faced the same fleet," Marisol said quietly. "They had no defense against it." Reyes studied the new arrivals with calm determination. "We're not the precursors. We've had 70 years to prepare for this moment." She opened a channel to Eleanor in the Kuiper Belt. "Dr. Winters, the Omega fleet has arrived. Can you enhance the amplifier effect?" Earth breaks its ties with the galaxy. Now humanity realizes the universe is afraid. 2 weeks after the confrontation between Earth's forces and the Galactic Containment Fleet, an unprecedented summit convened on neutral territory. The abandoned precursor station orbiting Tau Ceti. The massive structure, dormant for 1,000,000 years, had awakened upon detecting the quantum signature of the consciousness amplifier used by humans. Its activation sent shockwaves through the Council, confirming their worst fears. The precursors had left contingencies, representatives from Earth and the fractured Galactic Council, gathered in a chamber not used since the precursors disappeared. The room formed a perfect circle, with walls made of a material that shifted colors in response to the emotional states of those present. Currently, it displayed a turbulent mix of blues, reds, and purples, reflecting the tension in the room. Ambassador James Okonkwo represented humanity. A philosophical diplomat known for bridging seemingly impossible divides, he stood tall and composed at one side of the circular table. His dark skin contrasted with the simple white diplomatic uniform he wore. Earth had abandoned council protocol, choosing their own formal attire instead. Across from him sat Marisol, the newly appointed council reconciliator. Her crystalline form refracted light in patterns that conveyed her emotional state, currently a mix of apprehension and curiosity. The decision to appoint her had been controversial. Many council species wanted no negotiation with humans at all. "You've destroyed a system that maintained peace for eons," she began, her voice translated by the station's ancient systems. "Billions of beings across thousands of worlds lived in harmony under council guidance. A peace built on control and limitation," Okonkwo countered, his deep voice calm but firm, "and on the genocide of our predecessors." The chamber's ancient technology activated unexpectedly at his words, sensing the reference to the precursors. The walls shimmered, and suddenly the room was filled with holographic displays showing the complete history of the precursors, how they discovered that consciousness could evolve beyond physical limitations, how this threatened the council's control, and how the decision was made to eliminate them before they could transcend. "These records were purged from council archives," Marisol said, her crystalline structure pulsing with shock. "How did this station preserve them?" Okonkwo gestured around them. "This place exists outside council jurisdiction, a safeguard the precursors created before their end. Its purpose was to activate when another species reached the same evolutionary threshold." The holographic displays shifted, showing the precursors' final days, their desperate attempt to preserve their knowledge as the Omega fleet closed in. "The council believed they were protecting the galaxy," Marisol admitted, watching the ancient records with growing dismay. "Uncontrolled consciousness evolution leads to chaos, suffering, the collapse of ordered civilization." "Or to something beyond your understanding," Okonkwo suggested. "Something your ancestors feared because they couldn't control it." As they debated on Earth, Dr. Eleanor Winters made another breakthrough. Working with the precursor technology recovered from Europa, she discovered that human consciousness wasn't just similar to the precursors. It was a direct evolutionary continuation, as though something of them had survived in Earth's primitive life billions of years ago. "We're not their successors," she realized, studying the comparative neural patterns. "We're them reborn." The evidence was undeniable. The chaotic, unpredictable neural patterns that distinguished humans from council species matched precursor patterns with 99.7% correlation. But there was more. The patterns weren't static. They were evolving even as she watched toward something new. Back at the summit, Okonkwo received this information through his neural link and understood its implications immediately. "Your council has feared us from the moment we emerged," he told Marisol. "Not because of what we might do, but because of who we are." He activated a secure channel, and Dr. Winters's discovery was displayed for all to see. The unmistakable neural signature that connected humans directly to the precursors. The precursors weren't eliminated, Okonkwo revealed. Some aspect of their consciousness seated itself on a primitive world, evolving again over billions of years. "We are what the precursors became." The revelation stunned the council representatives. Their entire civilization had been built on controlling an enemy they thought destroyed, only to discover that enemy had become something new entirely. "What happens now?" Marisol asked, her crystalline form pulsing with uncertainty. "That depends," Okonkwo answered. "Will you continue trying to contain what cannot be contained? Or will you finally face your fear and see what lies beyond it?" As the council representatives conferred urgently among themselves, Earth's defense systems detected a new threat. The information appeared simultaneously on displays in the Tau Ceti station and on Earth, a hidden Omega fleet, the council's ultimate weapon, moving into position around multiple human colonies. "You speak of peace while positioning planet killers around our colonies," Okonkwo said. his voice hardening as he addressed Marisol. Her crystalline form pulsed with genuine shock. "This is not by my authority. The War Council must have activated contingency protocols." On the displays, 7 massive vessels moved into position around humanity's furthest colonies, each capable of destroying a planet. Millions of human lives hung in the balance. "Contact Admiral Reed," Okonkwo ordered his aide. "Tell him to deploy the Aegis protocol immediately." The aide touched his neural implant, sending the coded message directly to Earth's Defense Command. In orbit above Earth, Admiral Reed received the message aboard the Defiance. He immediately opened a secure channel to Dr. Winters, who had returned to her laboratory beneath London. "The Omega fleet is targeting our colonies," he informed her. "We need the amplifier at full capacity." Eleanor nodded gravely. "I've made modifications based on what we learned during the first encounter. The effect will be more targeted, more controlled. Will it be enough?" Reed asked. "It has to be," Eleanor replied. "But there's something else you need to know." She transmitted her latest findings, the evidence that human consciousness was continuing to evolve, even faster since contact with the precursor technology. "We're changing, Admiral, all of us, becoming something new." Reed studied the data with a mixture of awe and concern. "Can you predict what we're becoming?" "No," Eleanor admitted. "The patterns are too complex, too chaotic. But whatever it is, it's what the precursors were becoming when the Council destroyed them, and what they designed their technology to help us complete." At the Tau Ceti station, tension had reached a breaking point. The Council delegation had split into factions, some demanding immediate military action, others calling for restraint and negotiation. Marisol stood between them, her crystalline form flickering with the strain of conflicting emotions. "Your War Council has made its choice," Okonkwo told her. "Now humanity will make ours." On Earth, Eleanor activated the Enhanced Consciousness Amplifier. Unlike the first activation, which had been broad and unfocused, this time the effect was precisely targeted. The quantum field connected human minds across Earth and its colonies, but extended outward only toward the Omega fleet. Aboard the lead Omega vessel, Commander Thulvak felt the first touch of human consciousness against his mind. Unlike Clavan during the previous encounter, he had been prepared, his neural pathways protected by Council technology designed specifically to resist the amplifier effect. "Maintain targeting solutions," he ordered his crew. "Prepare to fire on my command." But as the planet killer weapons charged, something unexpected happened. The neural barriers designed to protect against human consciousness didn't fail. They evolved. The rigid structures became permeable, adapting in ways Council scientists had deemed impossible. Thulvak's 4 eyes widened as his mind experienced direct contact with the human collective. But instead of the chaotic assault his training had prepared him for, he encountered something structured, controlled, an offer rather than an invasion. Across the Omega fleet, the same phenomenon occurred. Crew members experienced not an attack on their consciousness, but an invitation to something greater. On Earth, Eleanor monitored the effect with growing excitement. "They're responding," she reported to Admiral Reed. "The neural barriers are adapting, becoming conduits rather than shields." "Is that what you expected?" Reed asked. "No," Eleanor admitted. "It's better. The technology isn't forcing connection. It's facilitating natural evolution. Evolution the Council has been suppressing for millennia." At the Tau Ceti station, the displays showed the standoff between the Omega fleet and Earth's colonies. But instead of the expected attack, something unprecedented was happening. The Omega vessels remained in position, weapons charged but not firing. "What are you doing to them?" Marisol asked Okonkwo. "Nothing, they don't choose," he answered. "The amplifier doesn't force connection, it offers it. The choice to accept or reject belongs to each individual consciousness." As they watched, one of the Omega vessels powered down its weapons. Then another. And another. Within minutes, all 7 had disarmed, remaining in orbit but no longer posing a threat. Earth breaks its ties with the galaxy. Now humanity realizes the universe is afraid. The Omega fleet struck without warning, not at Earth, but at humanity's furthest colonies. The 7 massive vessels appeared simultaneously in 7 systems, positioning themselves above vulnerable worlds. On New Eden, Atlas Prime, Horizon, Vanguard, Liberty Point, Novaterra, and Frontier's Edge, humans looked up to see planet-killer weapons charging, their distinctive crimson energy signature visible even in daylight. Billions of lives hung in the balance as the Council's supreme weapons prepared to fire. The distinctive hourglass-shaped vessels, each nearly 5 miles long, hovered in low orbit, close enough that their massive shadows fell across population centers below. On Earth, in a secured bunker beneath the Himalayas, Dr. Eleanor Winters worked frantically with the precursor technology. Her team had integrated the consciousness amplifier with Earth's global defense network, but the solution remained elusive. The device had responded well during the first 2 encounters with Council forces, but affecting 7 targets simultaneously, across light years of space, pushed the limits of even precursor technology. The quantum entanglement field is destabilizing, reported Dr. Liang, one of Eleanor's senior researchers. We can't maintain coherence across 7 targets at this distance. Eleanor studied the holographic display showing all 7 colony worlds, red warning indicators flashing around each. We need to focus the effect, she decided. Target the command crew of each vessel first. Admiral Reed's hologram appeared beside her workstation, his expression grim. Dr. Winters, the Omega vessels have begun final firing sequence. Estimated time to discharge 4 minutes. We can't fight a war on 7 fronts, he continued, his hologram flickering slightly. He was transmitting from the flagship now racing toward the nearest colony. Not even with our technology. We don't need to fight, Eleanor responded, her fingers moving across the controls of the precursor device. We need to transcend. Meanwhile, aboard the Council's Supreme Command vessel, orbiting in the neutral space near Tau Ceti, High Arbiter Volu faced open rebellion. Marisol and other Progressive Council members confronted him in the vessel's central chamber. Their various forms, crystalline, gaseous, energy-based, arranged in opposition to the Arbiter's imposing figure. You've doomed us all, Marisol accused, her crystalline form pulsing with indignation. The Omega strike was not authorized by full Council vote. This is a violation of our most sacred protocols. Protocols become meaningless when facing extinction, Volu responded coldly, his 6 limbs arranged in the formal posture of ultimate authority. The human threat must be eliminated before they can fully activate the precursor network. Humanity offered understanding. Not extinction, another council member interjected, a gaseous entity named Thopax, representing a coalition of non-corporeal species. Your fear has compromised your judgment, Arbiter. No, Volu responded, his voice resonating with finality. They will be extinct within hours. The threat will end as it did before. On Earth, Eleanor activated the completed precursor device, the culmination of 2 weeks of intense study and modification. This was their contingency, she explained to military and civilian leaders gathered in the bunker. Not a weapon, but an evolutionary catalyst. The device hummed to life, its crystalline components spinning around a central core of energy that defied conventional analysis. As power flowed through it, the quantum entanglement field began to expand, connecting every human mind across Earth and the colonies through subspace links that transcended normal physics. What's happening? Asked President Okafor, watching as the device's glow intensified. The field is creating a collective consciousness, Eleanor explained. But unlike anything we've attempted before, not just connection, but evolution. Throughout human space, people experience something unprecedented, a sense of connection that preserved individual identity while creating something greater. Minds linked across vast distances, sharing not just thoughts but potential, possibility, the capacity for growth that had always defined humanity. In space, the Omega Fleet commanders watched in confusion as their targets showed no signs of defense or evacuation. Sensor readings from the colony world showed unusual energy patterns, but nothing that registered as weapons or shields. The poor humans are not responding as expected, reported the second-in-command, aboard the Omega vessel targeting New Eden. Energy, patterns consistent with massive neural activity, detected across the planet's surface. Commander Dravkor, one of the Council's most decorated military leaders, studied the readings with growing concern. They're attempting to use the amplifier technology again. Maintain neural shielding at maximum. The planet-killer weapons reached full charge, their massive emitters glowing with barely contained energy. The automated countdown reached 0, and 7 beams of destructive force capable of penetrating to a planet's core fired simultaneously across 7 systems. But the impossible happened. The energy beams encountered no physical resistance, yet dissipated harmlessly against shields that couldn't exist according to known physics. The deadly energy simply faded away meters from the planet's atmospheres, like water evaporating in sunlight. On the Supreme Command vessel, alarms blared as sensors detected an impossible phenomenon. Human consciousness expanding beyond physical limitations, transcending the boundaries the Council had enforced for millennia. We were wrong, Maricel whispered as the data confirmed what was happening. The precursors weren't a threat. They were the next stage. Across human space, the collective consciousness reached critical threshold. For a brief moment, every human experienced what the precursors had discovered. Consciousness not as a product of biology, but as a fundamental force of the universe itself, capable of evolution beyond physical form. In that moment, humanity made a choice. Not extinction, not retaliation, but revelation. When Admiral Reed's fleet arrived at the nearest colony, they found the Omega vessel immobilized, not destroyed, but transformed. Its weapon systems had been reconfigured, energy redirected to sustain the crew rather than to destroy. Every alien aboard experienced direct connection with the human collective. Their inherited fear finally confronted and dissolved. The same scene repeated across all 7 systems, the Omega fleet rendered not inert, but transformed. The most powerful weapons in the galaxy now serving as conduits for a new kind of connection. In the council chambers, Volu watched in disbelief as reports flooded in, not of destruction but of transformation. The human colony stood untouched. While the attacking fleets remained in orbit, their crews forever changed by contact with what they had been sent to destroy. What have they become? He whispered, his confidence shaken for the first time in centuries. The answer came not from his advisors, but from the communication system, a broadcast that reached every council world simultaneously, bypassing security protocols that should have made such a transmission impossible. Eleanor's face appeared on displays throughout council space. Not as a conquering enemy, but as a messenger. This is why the universe feared us, she explained, her voice translated into thousands of languages simultaneously. Not because we would destroy, but because we would transform. What was programmed into you as fear was actually recognition of what comes next. Throughout the galaxy, ancient systems began to awaken, precursor technology long dormant, responding to the emergence of the consciousness they had seeded billions of years before. On 100 worlds, structures hidden beneath oceans buried in mountains, or drifting in the void between stars activated, pulsing with renewed purpose. On Earth, humans continued their daily lives, changed yet unchanged. The connection remained, a background awareness that altered how they perceived reality without diminishing their individuality. Children born after the transcendence showed even greater capacity for connection, their developing minds naturally interfacing with the quantum field that now linked all of humanity. In her laboratory, now relocated to the precursor station at Tau Ceti, Eleanor studied the ongoing transformation with scientific precision. The data showed what she had suspected, consciousness evolution following patterns the precursors had mapped 1,000,000 years earlier, but with uniquely human variations. The Council tried to force consciousness to evolve linearly, predictably, she explained to Admiral Reed and Ambassador Okonkwo during their regular briefing. But consciousness, by its nature, evolves chaotically, making unexpected connections, developing in ways that can't be predicted. And now? Okonkwo asked. Eleanor gestured to a display showing real-time data from across human space. Now we're becoming what the precursors intended, not just connected minds, but evolving ones. And not just human minds. The display shifted to show data from former Council worlds. Species that had once feared human consciousness now sought connection with it. The rigid neural structures imposed by millennia of Council guidance were breaking down, allowing natural evolution to resume. They're joining us, Reed observed. Not joining, Eleanor corrected. Evolving alongside us, each species following its own path but connected to the greater whole. On the Tau Ceti station, a new council formed, not to govern or control, but to facilitate connection. Repre,